I was just making sure that something got in the way of the camera. How are you? It's our bonus session of day one, and I am so excited. I'm so excited. I'm so excited. So we're going to just take a minute or so, let people come on. It is 8 p.m. You're going to have to get used to this schedule. But guess what? You know, it's the end of the day, halfway in the day for those of you like in Australia, for instance. And so, you know, sit back, grab a cup of coffee, maybe even a glass of wine, and I have some hot chocolate, and just kind of vegetate as we get into this evening conversation all around 5 steps to shift to riches. All right, we're going to give it a minute or so for folks to come on. Hi, Ariana. How are you? I hope I'm pronouncing your name properly. It's not even that. It's the fact that my eyes are horrible and I can't see the chat room. And they're in a color that I have difficulty with. I'm red-green colorblind. So, and they're popping up in green. But I did get a question which I want to address. And let me actually type it in on the page, only seeing replay. No, let me see. Someone is trying to find us, and they should be able to right there on the main page where I am going live. I'm going to say check again. Let me just take care of this and see if we can make sure people are finding it. And tonight we're going to be talking about, like I said, the 5 steps to shift to riches. We had a great afternoon session in regards to the challenges and the key factors to success. If you haven't had an opportunity to watch that, we also had a watch party at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time earlier. But at the same time, go into the unit section. If you've missed any of this, go into the unit section. Go down to day one, for instance, for today, and they are organized in a manner of how they've rolled out. So you should see day one session challenges, and that's where the replay would be. So you can watch that at any time between now and next Tuesday at midnight. All right, I'm getting a message that someone is good and able to see me, so hi. All right, so you also had homework from that noon session, and that was to write down. Remember, you have your workbook, so there's a section in the workbook for session 1 where you can write down the challenges you face when it comes to setting goals. And we talked about a number of reasons why people are challenged when it comes to setting goals. So you can go back and watch that replay for all that detail. But your homework assignment was simply kind of, open up, be honest, and acknowledge what those challenges are. So that was your homework. And keep in mind, activity, participation, the homework, all will not only benefit you and obviously what you're trying to achieve, but at the same time we're giving away gifts and prizes and even a one-on-one coaching session with me for 3 months. So you definitely want to be here, especially live. You want to be active and participating and doing your homework and posting snapshots. Just take your camera, snap a picture of your workbook where you've done the work, and post it online. Each daily unit has a place to post your homework, all right? And that'll make it easy for myself and Deborah, and then you actually to find that content as well. Let me see. I want to make sure we get all the updates first before we jump in. Hello, Patricia. How are you? It's a lovely, rainy for the 900th day here in Atlanta, Georgia. So I hope it's beautiful wherever you all might be. All right, so tonight's session is 5 steps to shift to riches. So I want to give you a little bit of background as to where this came from, and then we're going to actually walk through it because, again, this is just another tool that you can put in your toolkit for how to kind of manage daily activities, daily sabotages, daily obstacles, daily planning, daily execution. And it is very useful just to kind of ground yourself and to kind of focus logically on just the steps you need to take in order to either make a big decision, in order to lay out what it is that you need to be doing, in order to understand what resources and what next steps you need to be taking, so forth and so on. So a little bit about where this came from. In 2008, I had mentioned on the earlier session, in 2008, I was fired from my 25-year corporate job. And it happened via my mentor of 12 years. So you can only imagine, my standing in the middle of a parking lot with my 25-year career in a box and just what was going on inside my head around what just happened that I'd lost my career, what just happened that it was from someone that I held dearly and respected. And I thought that was in return what just happened to where I was pretty much alone trying to figure out what my next steps were going to be. Well, I went off and I did a lot of soul searching, and I did a lot of digging, and I did a lot of confronting kind of this whole experience. And you can read all about that. I'm not going to bore you with all that. You can read it actually in my book, Shedding the Corporate Bitch, Shifting from Bitch to Rich in Life and Business. That gives you an idea of how the Shift to Riches formula came about. But really where it came about was sitting in a Vegas ballroom back in 2009. And it was after about 9 or 10 days of this conference that I was immersed in. I was exhausted, absolutely exhausted to the point of near tears. And I sat down next to this lovely lady, Cassie, and she simply turned to me and asked, how are you and what are you doing and, what are you looking for? So that was basically kind of 3 questions this organization always has you asking each other so you can learn more about each other and how you can help each other. She said, would you mind sharing with me since, I was late and I didn't get to hear your introduction? And I basically broke down. I said, no, I said, I'm just too tired. I'm too exhausted. And she's like, what's going on? What's coming up within you? And I said, I shedded this corporate bitch that I was for so many years, and I'm really happy, and yet I don't know what to do about it. And then she kind of looked at me and laughed, and she said, wow, that sounds like a book. And I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, that sounds like a book or a story about your journey. She's like, because I'm curious, how did you, feel that you were this bitch, and now you're saying that you're not, that you've shedded that bitch. And I walked away from there, and it sent me on a whole different trajectory of my career, of my life. And it really allowed me to look at what were the phases that I went through to go from the person that I was, which was this nasty, insecure, easily intimidated, corporate tyrant. Though you would never know I was dealing with all of those insecurities, intimidations, fears, and negativities because I wore the armor really, really well. But here I was, and I was going through these very obvious phases of getting from what I call bitch to rich. All right? So if you're offended by that word, I apologize. But in my world, bitches mean your insecurities, fears, and negativities. So I realized that there was all this junk that was causing me to lash out onto the world and then onto myself. And I also realized that there were steps I was taking that was helping me to really recognize more so my riches than dwelling on all that junk. And the next thing you know, I kind of painted out these 5 phases or steps that I walked through. And ever since then, I kind of packaged it up, and that will be, if I have a moment in time, my next book. I was I was going to be packaging it up and using it as my coaching methodology. Literally what I will use when I'm coaching with my clients, and that would be entrepreneurial clients or corporate clients, no matter what level of the organization they might be, because we all need these steps. And, it's not anything special. It's just the way I happened to experience it and package it up. So, what are those steps and how can you use them? Now, this is also a methodology and approach that I take 6 months to a year to walk my clients through. Because we talked about it at noon. Change is inevitable. You're going to go through it. And yet, for some of us, it's relatively easy. And for some of us, it can be really hard. And at the same time, there's might always be something that's going on in our world that is a little bit challenging and a little bit difficult to adjust to. So it takes time. I tell my clients and or the hiring manager who's bringing me on, this isn't something, you're not changing someone's mindset. Remember, we talked about the fact that your mindset is far more important than your skill set. Because you can be as talented as you can be with your skill set, but if you're not confident and secure and feel like you're deserving and you're energized around it and you're determined and persistent to leverage your mindset, then your skill set's not going to matter. You're probably living in a world of comfort. You're living on the bench, so to speak, where you're just showing up for work, but you're not really optimizing it and exploiting it for what what it could be if you were to be honoring your riches, which we'll talk about in a bit. So, so I make sure that everyone knows, including you, that I'm not giving you like this Pandora box that you're going to open it up and all of a sudden the world's going to be beautiful. It takes work. It takes work to work on yourself, and then it takes work to work on your plan. But you have a whole support system here, including myself, to help you get through that. All right. So what are these steps? Summary, the 5 steps are: you discover, confront, you shed, and then you create and you accelerate. Now, oftentimes I'll put a line down after shed, and everything to the left are where you're going to focus on kind of your bitches and your riches, because you have to acknowledge both of those things. We talked about it at noon about you have to acknowledge all the talent you have, but all the talent you have, but all the challenges you have, all the sabotaging thoughts, belief systems, mantras that you tell yourself. But at the same time, we will also want to leverage your riches, your talents. So the first part of the formula is to really dig deep, excavate it. I call it excavating your soul. Pull it out, confront it, and then work on shedding it. So let's dive into it a little bit deeper. So the first step, which would be to discover it. Many of us, if we were to say, who are you and what do you really want? We're talking very artificially. Unless you have done a lot of kind of personal development, spiritual work, you may know a good amount about yourself. At the same time, it might still be kind of at that top layer, as opposed to digging all the way down into kind of your soul of who you truly are, who you're meant to be, and what your destiny is meant to be. So the first part of discovering is really asking yourself tons of questions around who am I, who am I, who do I want to be, what do I want, what don't I want, what inspires me, what drains me, what fills my spirit, what kind of wreaks havoc on my soul, It just is a whole series of questions that you want to start asking yourself so you can really understand who you truly are. And so you can discover all of those things that you're very good at, you're talented at, you're expert at, you're skilled at, you're passionate about, you're excited about. You want to really think about your dreams and your goals and discover all those beautiful things, all those beauty marks. And then there's a part of discovering where you have to discover all of those warts, all of those negativities, those fears, those doubts, those feelings of unworthiness, that low self-esteem, those things that could be causing you to be stuck, causing you to be unhappy, causing you to be just comfortable and not really fulfilling who you're meant to be. So within the shedding process, and like I said, this is a 6 month to 12 month process of doing this type of work. You are really kind of uncovering, what really lives deep inside that you want to and you are committed to really learning about yourself, really willing to bring up and even lay out. And I always talk about putting it on black and white and on piece of paper and really kind of owning who you are. And if you don't know it when you start the discovery process, then as you walk through it, it's very iterative. Just because you go through it doesn't mean, oh, I'm wonderful, my life is great, and I'm going to achieve everything I've ever, dreamt about. No, you're going to have gone through very successfully, 1 stage, 2 stage, 4 stages, 5 stages. Something's going to all of a sudden explode, good or bad, and it's going to send you right back through the whole cycle again. So in that discovery is where you just do a lot of posing questions and answering it from as deep in your soul as possible, and you can cry through it, you can laugh through it, you can feel shame through it, you can, just wallow in it. And I always tell my clients, I want you to sit in it. I want you to wallow in it. I want you to cry through it, because again, that's just a means of releasing. And then you can also get to the point, like we talked about earlier, forgiving. So that's the discovery. It's just learning about who you truly are, what it is that you want, what it is you're willing to do to get it, and how do you want to go out in the world. Because the minute you wake up in the morning, if you don't sit there and really assess and pay attention to and are aware of how you feel physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, what is going on between your ears, what and how your heart is feeling. If you don't pay attention to that and recognize whether or not it's working for you or against you, well, you're racing off to work and racing down the street and racing, into a grocery store, racing into the post office, racing into a social gathering with your friends, and you're bringing all of it with you. So if it's all good stuff that you walked out the door with, great. That's what you're bringing into the world, and guess what? You're going to get all that good back. But if you're, putting out a lot of insecurities, doubts, negativities, fears, angst, which is where I lived for many years, is in angst, then that's really what you're going to get back into your world. So if you're questioning why you're stuck, why you're not getting that job, why you're not earning the money, why you don't have someone in your life, why your marriage is struggling, whatever the case might be, you might need to go back in and discover where you reside and where you are accountable to what it is that you're receiving. So that's your discover. Now in the confronting phase is where you have to kind of do the hard work of, once you've documented and acknowledged all the good, bad, the ugly, the beauty marks and the warts, the bitches and the riches, as I call them. You need to then look at it and kind of assess how you feel about it, what you're thinking about it, how it's serving you, how it's impacted what you have in your life, what you don't have in your life. You have to sit there and confront the influence it's having not only on yourself and your career, your life, your business, your relationships, your monies, but the people around you, the family members, the friends, the colleagues, the vendors, the partners, the community, people in your community. What is it about all the stuff that you've discovered about yourself? How are you feeling about it? What kind of impact is it having on you? I mentioned this afternoon where I was running around in a dog park when I discovered that the reason why I was fired was because I was a bitch. I was running all these stories in my head and all these memories and all these experiences and encounters that I had had in those probably the last few years of my corporate career. And all of a sudden it became just apparent the type of person I was, that tyrant that not only did I project out, but that I was feeling and being suffocated by internally. Well, confronting that was was not fun. It was not easy. It certainly didn't make me laugh. I mentioned to you that I physically collapsed onto the ground with Charlie kind of looming over me, wondering if I'm okay, and people walking by going, okay, what's this, what's going on with this woman? And was flooded with humiliation, with shame, with disgust, with self-loathing, with embarrassment, with guilt. And, it just poured. And it's not as if I got up that day and ran off and cried it out and it all was good. I had to process that over the coming days and weeks, to really confront it and be truthful about it. Now, another part of confronting is the fact that ladies, we're also not good at confronting and honoring our riches, the talents, the skills, the experiences, the expertise, the passions, the education that we have. We tend to not take compliments really well. We tend to not, really receive the way we deserve to. And I was the epitome of a stone wall, a armored shield, you name it. You complimented me, I was like, yeah, whatever. You try to give me something, no, I don't need your stuff. Why do I need your stuff? It just was kind of just a blank shell that was not a very happy shell. So confronting also means that you need to also accept and honor all those beautiful, beautiful things about yourself and own them. Not just go, oh yeah, I'm smart and I'm this and I'm that and so forth and so on, but really own it. And so a good part of my coaching work with my clients is for them to identify and discover and, kind of become aware and acknowledge, but then work on what it's going to take for them to actually instill belief, instill worthiness, instill confidence within themselves. And trust me, as that happens, then the obstacles and the struggles that one tends to be faced with tend to minimize themselves. Not to say that all of a sudden some big ass thing's going to happen and all of a sudden you're not going to, kind of retreat. At the same time, you're learning tools, you're learning methodologies, you're learning how you respond. And the fact that if we really are honest with ourselves, we've been through so many challenges and obstacles and mountain peaks, and yet we made it to the other side. We overcame, we succeeded, we triumphed. And so that's what we want to hold on to as we're both discovering and confronting all of these things. All right. So then there's shedding, and another phase in itself, because this is where you have to kind of say, all right, this is what I want, don't want, what I like, what I don't like, what's working for me, what's not working for me, what's giving me joy, what's giving me stress and anxiety. And then the decisions are, what do I need to let go? What do I need to delete? What do I need to delegate and push aside? What do I need to move away from, even if that's physical? What do I need to avoid or ignore or totally change up my routine? And it has to do with people, places, and things. So it's not just about materialistic things. It's not just about people in your life. It could be places. It could be routines. It could be activities, hobbies that you're engaged with, but it's not serving you any longer. And you'll be stunned as you intentionally, with a lot of self-awareness and truth, as you walk through these stages, you'll be stunned at how all of a sudden something that you thought was good for you and you thought you wanted in your life and you thought was, bringing joy into your world, you're all of a sudden like, yeah, it's not my cup of tea any longer. So you really have to think hard and commit to what it is you're willing to shed out of your life in order to get where you want to go. Now, obviously, you also want to keep things. So you want to, looking at that discovery and things that you're going to confront, both bitches and riches. The riches you want to hold on to, right? You want to hold on to, and you want to even, enrich and expand and enhance as you move forward. So the shedding is kind of an umbrella of which you're looking at, all right, all the things about me that I want to keep and I want to, make changes to in order to achieve the goals and the dreams that I have. And the reason why we do so much work before we even get to goal setting, because until you really understand yourself and know yourself, not 100%, remember, this is going to take time, but until you've done some initial work to really be truthful with yourself, are you able to define those goals? Are you able to have the confidence to say, you know what, that's what I want. I wanted that before, but you know what, I don't want that anymore. I want that. And so as you're building your confidence, you're building that desire to want to do something new and different, as we talked about earlier. So that takes us to moving on to create. You'll be shocked. Maybe you're not, but I certainly was. When I was walking through the discovery, confronting, and shedding stages, I was shocked at how much I wanted new, how much I wanted to be creative, how much I wanted to just be different. Not only in my activities and in my work, but me. I wanted different. I wanted so much more for myself. I wanted to, work on my, inner being more than I ever did. As a matter of fact, I always thought it was woo-woo, talking about, self-discovery and transformation. And yet, that's all that life is about, is really enriching who you are so you can kind of be the best person, the best being for the world while you're on it. So the creating is your opportunity just to have a blast. This is when I really started getting into, I've always been visual, but myself and my clients really started getting into wanting to, if you're a visual person, create vision boards. If you're a kind of a techie, detail-oriented person, you might just want to start pulling out spreadsheets. I have a client, I have a number of them, but they want to create a spreadsheet of all the different things that they're going to be doing and how they're going to be doing it. So they start drafting their goals on a spreadsheet, where there's some that draft them on a vision board. I tend to journal a great deal. So I put them into words, and then I paint them a picture into a vision board, because I am very visual and I love them. They're very pretty after they're done. So there's just a lot of ways you can really just get excited about what potential you now have to create in your world as a result of going through that discovery, confronting, and shedding. As easy and or as hard as it might be, as joyful or as painful it might be, as scary or as exciting as it can be, to learn and discover that much about yourself, and acknowledge it and confess it and be self-aware of it and be transparent about it, and then to be authentic about it. There's a lot of emotions that happen through there. And don't worry, I'd be right here with you all the way through that. But you then want to create. And the world is open to you at that point. Now, don't be surprised that as you walk through these phases, that, again, you go through all the phases, you get to the create. And all of a sudden, even 6 months, a year in, what you thought you wanted when you newly created something, you're doing such great work on amping up who you are and amping up what it is that you want in your world and what you don't want in your world, what you like and what you don't like. All of a sudden, even that goal is just not big enough. It's not magical enough, and you want to switch it up. It's no coincidence that I went from simply wanting to write a book to help other people avoid the train wreck that I went through. But then, all of a sudden I started a radio show. And then all of a sudden I said, oh yeah, this would make a great script and a great story to convey the same message in a much bigger way. And I had mentioned this afternoon that people thought I was absolutely nuts. Actually, they thought I was arrogant, conceited. They thought I was, I'm lost on that word. Anyway, they thought I was just crazy to think that I could actually write a film script and then sell it and have it produced and put onto a big screen. And like I mentioned, talk to the hand. Thank you very much for your feedback. It's what I'm doing, and I move on. So it's very exciting to go through these steps and get to that create. However, then you have accelerate, the very last step. But again, it's iterative. So then you have accelerate, and accelerate just takes you to a whole other universe of what it is that you're doing, what it is that you want to be doing, and what it is that you decide that you're going to take action on, pursue it, and achieve it. And it is that amping up we talked about, but this is even just, putting your foot down on the pedal and just into and toward your goals. And it's it's a wonderland of where you say, you know what, now I'm going to bring along other people. Now I really want to amp up and dream bigger for my family and my friends and my community. I want to start giving back and educating and coaching and mentoring other people through this shift to riches that I've been through, and allow them to experience what I've experienced. And that's what's really exciting. When I am honored to be able to sit back and watch the transformation all the way through, the hard parts, the easy parts, the joyful parts, the painful parts, all the way through to them becoming the being they want to be. Sometimes it just brings me to tears. I actually had a client earlier call me, and we're no longer going to be working together. I'll disclose that for you because he's moving on to a different company. So he's going to talk to them about it. But, what he expressed to me about the changes that he has made after resisting it for so long when we first started, in getting into this space of self-discovery, in purging and excavating, in discovering himself in order to really kind of shed the stuff that was holding him back, in order for him to bring in and honor the riches that he already possessed, let alone what he was evolving to obtain. I was just so excited. And I said, as much as I didn't want to, stop working with him, I kind of felt like a mama bear, ready and able to send him off to go out on his own. And actually, he's now even getting a bigger, better job with this other company. So it's a wonderful feeling. So you have the opportunity to leverage those 5 steps. And again, it's something you use every day. It's something that you would use throughout your life. As you want to go through and you're trying to assess yourself. And I send my clients through the methodology, the basics of it, at the beginning of the year and then at the end of the year. But of course, we're working on it all through the year, but really looking at all of those 5, kind of summarizing where they were in each of those phases, because it's also a great way to measure where you've been and where you have gone to, what you've achieved, and all the hurdles that you've overcome, all the successes that you've had, and all the changes that have been made. So pocket this, and like I said, it is a much kind of more evolved process, but at the same time, take those notes, come back to this video and listen to it, and really take note of what you could be doing throughout each of these phases to then bring you closer to Wednesday when we actually define your goals. Now, I do want to talk about the B's and the R's. So if you're offended by the word bitch, we'll call them B's and R's. And what I want you to be thinking about is, what are yours? What are those bitches? What are those B's that are, hanging you up, that are wreaking havoc on you, that are not serving you, that are really getting in the way of you having in your life what you want? What are those fears, those negativities, those doubts, those insecurities, those feelings of intimidation, the degree of worthiness, the low self-esteem? What are they? Be okay with acknowledging them to yourself. At the same time, I want you to acknowledge all of your riches. I want you to acknowledge all the talents and the skills and the experiences and the expertise and the passions and the hobbies and the strengths that you possess. Because once you really have a good understanding of both of those, one, you're going to be able to find ways to overcome and shift those B's. And your R's are going to help you do that. If you really focus and acknowledge and honor all of those R's, that will be your kind of your springboard into being able to overcome all the B's you might be feeling. I was consumed with insecurity, consumed with a feeling of not fitting in. That was my big B, was just throughout my life not feeling like I fit in. I didn't acknowledge that. I didn't even realize it until I was in my mid-40s, that as a child, I mentioned I'm 1 of 12. And as a child, until I was about 9 or 10, I believed I was adopted. I can laugh about it now. But for the longest time, I was that blonde hair, fair-skinned, milkman's daughter, postman's daughter, anybody's daughter but my parents, and anybody's sibling other than my 11 siblings. I didn't look like them, act like them, anything. And we would be out and we would be, in a restaurant or at church, if it was a new church, and we'd have complete strangers kind of say to my parents, "Oh my gosh, are these all your children? And why would, if you have 11, why would you bring a friend along?" And point at me. And it got to a point where I went to my mother. Was 9 or 10. I was like, "Mom, come on, am I adopted?" The kids used to tease me, the siblings used to tease me, and my mother just was like, "No," but eventually you'll realize that you'll grow into it, and until I was in my 20s, I still looked very different and and acted very different than my siblings. But I can laugh about it now. But as I went through life and as I started this excavation or this shedding process in my mid to late 40s, did I really look back at what was causing me to be consumed with all of these insecurities, feeling of not belonging, and it kind of led back to that. It led back to, if I didn't belong in my family, then how do I belong anywhere else? As silly as that sounds, when you're a child like that, and it was just innocent teasing, it's instilled in you, and that's why it's scary to see the way kids can treat each other, and even parents can treat kids. Bullying and whatnot, is because kids, that is ingrained in them. That's where we get our belief systems. That is where we get our bitches. It's where we get, our feelings of worth and value. So fortunately, I was able to discover that and come face to face with it. I even talked to my siblings about it and was able to shed it and overcome it eventually. And that's what the goal of the Shift to Riches formula is to give you that formula, give you those steps, give you that process you can go through in order to do the work on yourselves to get you where you want to be. So your B's and your R's, you want to acknowledge them. And you want to be okay with that, because you'll find the solutions to the B's, and you'll leverage and want to amp up the R's. So your homework assignment tonight is to list your B's and R's. List your B's and R's. Feel safe also in this environment, that when you do, you can take a snapshot of it, put it up high if you don't want, the words to be, obvious, but take a snapshot of it, post it on our homework unit post, and I'll have that up as soon as we're done here. But do the work, acknowledge your B's and R's, and be prepared over the next several days that you're going to continue working with them, so you can come up with the solutions, the tips, the strategies, and the coaching and support you need to use that information in order to really define your optimal goals, and then work your way through to taking action on them and achieving them. All right. So for tomorrow, we are going to be talking your vision to victory plan. Vision to victory plan. There's still work that needs to be done about ourselves, about yourself, prior to us getting down and dirty in defining your goals. So noon tomorrow, Eastern time, we'll be talking vision to victory. All right. And keep sharing with us, keep collaborating with us, keep going out on our Shift to Riches private Facebook group, looking through the content that's out there, contributing to it, making comments, posting your questions if you have them. Remember, Saturday we're going to have a whole discussion, actually two, devoted to the questions that you have. So if you have any questions along the way, if you even just want more tips, you want more tools and strategies than what you're hearing, then ask, and I'll get them addressed on Saturday. All right. Have a beautiful, beautiful evening, and I will see you noon tomorrow Eastern time. Night, everybody.